Supposed to say, I'm not a movie star. Okay, I'm Roger Sanders from Sanders Sound Systems. I used to run Intersound and developed electrostatic speakers over the last 40 years. These are the latest models, we call it the Model 10A. These speakers are deliberately made to be highly directional. Most audiophiles think that wide dispersion is very desirable, but it's actually just the opposite. Wide dispersion is the poorest way to make a speaker for several reasons. And before I mention that, let me point out that I invented the curved electrostatic loudspeaker that Martin Logan uses. And after years of experimenting with it, I decided it was the wrong approach. So I abandoned that and I use flat panels to eliminate dispersion as much as possible. There are three things that are ruined by wide dispersion: transient response, imaging, and frequency response. Most of the energy doesn't come to your ears. Most of the energy is spread all throughout the room, where it bounces off various surfaces, sometimes several times, and then arrives at your ear. In fact, the typical speaker would not be even listenable if it weren't for the fact there was a lot more than one reflection in a room. There are hundreds or thousands, and as you get all these reflections coming around, they average out to some degree and get your frequency response to a point where it's tolerable. Second problem, transient response. We have a wide dispersion speaker, you get all these rim shots bouncing off the walls and coming at you, and what you really hear, instead of one crisp transient, you hear popcorn. Just a whole bunch of transients really close together, and if you doubt this, just think of the last time you heard headphones. Even lousy headphones have a crisp transient quality to them that speakers just don't have. And it's not because the speakers are bad, it's because you're listening to the room. And that really messes up the transient response. The third issue is imaging. If you've got the sound bouncing all over the room, you've got distorted phase information. You're hearing a lot of sound that's coming from you after various delays. And as a result, it's very confused, and you really can't perceive three-dimensional imaging very well in a wide dispersion speaker. And with highly directional speakers, especially planar speakers that give you a very precise unified wavefront that's very much in time and phase, you will hear a three-dimensional image that does not appear to be associated with the speakers. It's like a holographic image out in space. So I deliberately make my speakers highly directional to eliminate these problems. Now, of course, a lot of audiophiles think that, well, then you can only listen to it at the sweet spot. All speakers, stereo speakers, have an infinitely small sweet spot where they're exactly equidistant from the listener. However, most speakers you can hardly tell when you're in a sweet spot because you're mostly listening to the sounds bouncing around the room. Now, the issue is then what if you're not in the sweet spot? Well, the answer is they sound pretty much like ordinary speakers. The sound bounces around the room and you hear it, and it sounds just fine. It's just, in comparison to the sweet spot, it sounds average. Whereas when you get to the sweet spot, it sounds incredible. You just have to hear it to appreciate it. So don't think that just because it's directional, that's a flaw. That's actually a better way to do it. And again, you have to hear it to believe it. Traditionally, virtually impossible to get a woofer to work well and integrate with an electrostatic speaker because an electrostatic speaker has no mass and a woofer has a lot of mass. It's taken me 17 years to solve this integration problem. I've done so now by using a transmission line woofer system, which has it's like a tube inside that's folded up. It's about 8 feet long and filled with damping material. As a result, the woofer acts like it's got a little shock absorber attached to it, and it stops instantly as soon as energy is no longer driving the woofer. The very lowest frequencies, however, there is time enough for the energy to escape through the port. And this is shifted in time so that it comes out in phase with the woofer and supports the deep bass. So even though this has a 10-inch woofer, it sounds very, very deep. In fact, it'll go flat to 22 hertz. This is further made adjustable for the user for their particular room acoustics with a crossover amplifier. The crossover amplifier contains an electronic crossover and equalization that lets you adjust the mid-range to make it sound as full or sweet or analytical. Basically, however you like it to sound, you can make this speaker sound that way. Furthermore, it's got deep bass equalization below 100 hertz You can adjust up to 12 dB of boost if you need it down into the very deep bass if your room is deficient. The net result of this is a woofer that really integrates perfectly with the electrostatic. This speaker sounds like one driver, not multiple drivers. Also, I actually hand make all the speakers and electronics myself in my own facilities. Even my amplifiers and preamps. Take a look in here and you can see the quality of the construction and the detail that's involved, even to the point of using gold-plated circuit boards. I actually stuff these boards with the electronics myself.
Wow.
And test them on my own spectrum analyzer, make sure everything works perfectly. I have a policy of absolute customer satisfaction. I will send speakers or electronics to anyone who wishes for a 30-day risk-free in-home trial. If you don't like what you hear, I not only allow you to send the speakers back or electronics back, I insist that you send them back. I don't want anybody with my equipment that isn't happy. I even pay round-trip shipping, so it's absolutely risk-free. So if you think you want to hear these, instead of trying to find them in a dealer, take them straight to your home where you can listen and take your time and be sure of what you're hearing. You have to hear it to appreciate it and believe it. Give me a call.